This movie suffers from the prequel syndrome, which is where you know exactly what is going to happen, so there's no real tension in the movie. Now, the third one didn't suffer from that because it gave you an alternative plot that kind of worked in line with what we already knew, so it worked well. This one doesn't do that. We have the duo and Elise, and because, as I said, this is a prequel, we know exactly kind of how it's going to play out. No one's really in danger. And what it tries to do is it tries to give Elise a kind of origin story, but that doesn't really work either because it's so like ham-fisted and generic that it just could be anybody's origin story. You know, she can see ghosts and she's abused by her father. Like, how generic. They even tried to kind of have a kind of redemption arc for the father, and again, it's like you didn't need it. You could have just had him be a bad person. You didn't really need to go, oh yeah, you know, he's a bad person because this happened to him, so he's bad now, so you must forgive him. Yeah, just because like something bad happens to you doesn't mean you should inflict pain on other people, and like that's not like a morally good thing to like say, oh yeah, you know, he was abused, so he could abuse someone else, and that's fine. But that's not to say this isn't a good movie. I do actually really enjoy this. And if it wasn't for this movie, I wouldn't like the Insidious franchise whatsoever, because I watched the first one, hated it, right? Then this one came out in cinema, and like I saw the trailer, it really appealed to me, so I checked it out. And then I watched it, loved it, and then I watched the rest of the franchise. And then I went back to this one, and I was like, yeah, it's okay. So this is essentially my third watch. Like, there are things in this movie that shouldn't work. Like, every movie has like a free story arc. You have the beginning, the middle, and the end. And this one has that, but they are completely separate stories. You got literally the first one, which is Elise's childhood. You have the guy who is haunted, and then you have Elise's nieces. So they're all completely different stories, but they all kind of progress into each other. So the narrative works. I actually think the Key Demon is my favourite Insidious monster because visually it just looks amazing. It just looks creepy as hell. Like, if he's crawling or if he's doing something else, it just looks great. Like, you get him different lightings, you have like part of his face torn off. Brilliant. And you know, the whole keying people as well is just like a fantastic concept. Like being able to turn someone's vocal cords off, stopping their heart. That is such an interesting concept that it just kind of ramps up the kind of terror that he can inflict. Like the rest of the demons in the series don't have this kind of power. Just a shame that kind of he is in this film because, as I said, you know, we know like Elise isn't in danger, so having her take him on directly, you know, yes, you have like the niece in danger as well, so you could have potentially lose her, but you know, Elise isn't going to get trapped. You know, she's not going to get full for it because of what happens in Insidious 1. And like the cinematography in this one, it really takes a bit of a dive, but I can understand that because, you know, we don't have Lee Winnell, you know, directing this one. I don't know why he didn't do this because he did free, so doing this one made perfect sense. But yeah, he wrote it and he stars in it, which is still cool. But yeah, he didn't write it. And James Wan isn't doing it either. So we have a new guy, and it just doesn't look the same. It doesn't like have all these weird kind of like blue hues the first two have, or like the kind of smoky fervor that we got in the third one. It's very very generic looking, unfortunately. I know I'm saying that a lot. Speaking of Lee, right? His character gets so much stuff to do in this. Like, he probably has the best scenes in this movie because when Elise is trapped downstairs, he is the guy who has to come to the rescue. And like, when the girls are kind of like introducing themselves, he's the one like, you know, he's awkward. He's kind of the guy you're rooting for in this movie. And it's just fun seeing like him take on a kidnapper because he is the geek. And, you know, he is not like suddenly, you know, filled with rage or something like that and just like fighting him and like this brutal thing. He's hiding and he's cowering and he's being smart in what he's doing. And that's just brilliant. It is just like so good because they didn't alter the character in any way to make it not fit the narrative. They stuck to their guns and they delivered on something that was really, really well done. I do think this movie kind of feels cheap towards the end because instead of like having like a clever little Easter egg that the third one had, or just something, right? It could have just ended and then just be done with it and go, oh yeah, you know, this is like the next one, get a call or something like that. And like you do get the call, but you also get the stock footage that they used from Insidious 1. And like just showing those scenes again, it just makes it feel cheap. Even when you had the kid falling off the stairs, right? You know, having Elise see him and then that kind of thing. And then like, you know, then going to watch Insidious 1, because I watched these in chronological order, right? So he screams in terror because he's hearing like this scratching noise straight after. So having like the retcon of Elise being there and then like looking at him and then that doesn't make sense. Like it doesn't make sense at all. So I don't know why they did that. I understand they couldn't get the same kid to come back because obviously he's aged, but I don't know. I think they could have just been smarter and played it a lot better. But for what this movie is, I think it is really, really enjoyable. It is still one of the better Insidious movies. It is something that I do actually have a lot of time watching. And when I was watching it, time just flew by. Like I didn't even think, and it was like done.